Hey everyone, and welcome to Voices of Veritas, a podcast made by the church for the church. I'm Ryan Hennigan.
And I'm Michael Bashaw. At Veritas Community Church, we believe that the gospel of Jesus Christ is at work in and through us, transforming all things.
On Voices of Veritas, you will hear real stories of gospel transformation, spiritual insights, and heartfelt conversations that seek to encourage us as we follow Jesus.
We invite you to join us twice a month to listen, learn, and grow in faith together.
Well, hello, and welcome to the Voices of Veritas podcast. I am your host, Ryan Hennigan, and I am joined with my co-host, Michael Bashaw. Michael, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Ryan. How are you?
You know what? I'm doing great. We are actually recording on Columbus Day, so I had the day off today from work, so very happy about that. Happy to be productive and still use the day for podcast recording.
Can't beat that.
That's right. You did not have the day off today, is that correct?
I did not, but I am still happy to be here. I got in a quick dinner before I came to the studio, the church, the studio in the church, and I'm excited for this conversation today.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of the conversation, we are here to talk about My Village Ministries. And to do that, we have some guests joining us. We have Daniel and Tabitha Stands. So why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves? Tabitha, let's start with you.
Yeah, my name is Tabitha, and I'm at the Short North campus at Veritas. And our family's been involved with My Village for almost 8 years now. We've been at Veritas, I think, for almost 8 years as well. We have 6 kids of our own, 8 ranging from age 1 to 10. And yeah, I work as a nurse contingent as well.
What is a nurse contingent?
I just work 16 hours a month.
Oh, okay.
Minimally. Very little nursing.
And is that for a particular hospital in town? Or
I work for a children's hospital.
Okay, great. Nice. And Daniel, how about you?
Yeah, hey, good to be here. I'm Daniel Stands. We've been, like Tabitha said, going to Veritas for about 8 years. We live up in Northeast Columbus. If you know Sharon Woods Metro Park, we're just south of that. Really great neighborhood. Some other Veritasers around there. We host a community group up there. I have been doing that for almost 2 years, just under. And I work in finance for Cardinal Health. I've been there for just under 10 years. And since COVID time, have been work from home primarily, which has been really nice. So Tabitha just works 16 hours a month. Doesn't do anything else. She's just always kind of relaxing on the couch. And
Yes.
I kind of take care of everybody at home as I'm working. No, just kidding. Tabitha works much more than 16 hours a month and is also homeschooling 3 out of the 6 currently. So there's a lot going on at the house.
Yeah, sounds very busy.
Yeah.
I was curious, something you said just a minute ago. You host your community group. Do you also lead it or just host?
Yes. Yeah, we lead and host. Yep.
Okay, nice. Do you guys like make snacks or have some kind of like, I don't know, go-to for when you host?
Yeah. So we were really excited to start hosting and leading, and specifically chose to do it on a Sunday night, and wanted to make sure that we were able to do dinner every week. So we do a dinner with the group every week, which I think has been really awesome to be able to just have that extra time of fellowship, just to not necessarily be, in the Bible reading and studying the whole time, but, we're just kind of hanging out and eating and getting to know each other, and just definitely speeds up and accelerates kind of those friendships and experiences. And then we do like some study kind of post the meal. But that's been really fun. I would highly recommend that.
Awesome. So can you give us a little background, like introduction almost, to what My Village Ministries is? Who's it for? How long has it been around? And then how did you guys get started with it?
Yeah, so I'll start us off and I'll fill in the blanks. But My Village exists one of the goals is to prevent unnecessary foster care placements, and to introduce the church into the crisis scenarios that occur all throughout the city and all throughout our world. Right now, the My Village is specifically focused in on Columbus, Ohio. There are some other branches within Ohio as well that the team of My Village manages and does the administration for. But like Tabitha said, so prior to the official My Village organization, there was a chapter of an organization called Safe Families that was in Columbus, Ohio. And that's how we got connected. That specific chapter's leadership kind of branched off and created My Village Ministries about 4 years ago. And so that's been, Safe Families is no longer operating in Columbus, but now it's My Village. So yeah, so essentially what My Village does is it trains up, and we can kind of hit this as we go, but like trains up a number of different roles that support the ministry within churches. So there's an administrative staff. It is a parachurch organization, but it operates through the church. And so trains up these roles. One of the roles is a host family. And so it's kind of like a vital piece of the puzzle, right? Really all the roles are vital, but the host family specifically is who is bringing children from these scenarios where a mom might have reached out. I say mom because typically it's usually a single parent household, but there are times where there's both dad and mom. And it's usually in a crisis scenario. So it's like lost a job, dealing with the housing issues, or maybe dealing with food issues within the home, or sometimes mental health related. And essentially the mom will reach out, parent will reach out to My Village and say, hey, I need help. And that's where My Village then steps in, kind of triages the situation, helps mom kind of develop a crisis plan to kind of get through that, but also pairs the family with a church and a specific host family that then will take kids in, and it can be anywhere from, could be a night to, multiple months sometimes. I can't remember what the average.
4 to 6 weeks.
4 to 6 weeks.
The average.
So yeah, that's what My Village does, and I'll kick it over to Tabitha to fill some gaps in.
Yeah, so like Daniel said, just coming alongside families in crisis in our cities. And that could be a number of different reasons or whatever brings on that situation. But I think the cool thing is, and a lot of this is what Daniel said, is it pulls this family who is isolated. And at these points of isolation is when child abuse and neglect happen. It's when things can spiral. So by allowing this mom kind of a bridge to the local church, into pulling her into community, we're able to pull her out of that isolation and surround her as the body of Christ in hopes of not just walking her through the crisis, but truly just to proclaim the love of Christ to her and be able to proclaim the gospel to her family, and pull her into community along with her family. That way she's not in isolation.
I love the holistic approach to that, and how you said it's really just bringing a whole community around somebody in their time of deepest need. It seems like when you guys place a child or children, it can be multiple, I assume, at the same time with a host family, is that always due to a parent or parents reaching out? Are they the ones who have to make the contact, or do you work with CPS, or how does that work?
Yeah, so MVM functions strictly on a self-referral. So the mom would call in herself. We do have partners with pregnancy decision centers, with CPS, with hospitals, where the hospital will give out our number to moms in crisis. And so we're seeing a lot more moms calling in even before, through Pregnancy Decision Health Center, calling in before they're even having a child, trying to think ahead, which is great. But yeah, the mom calls in herself.
It can be multiple kids placed. You said 4 to 6 weeks is the average, right? One of the questions that I had was, this is obviously, you said it's a parachurch organization. So this isn't like a Veritas ministry, but it is a ministry that Veritas partners with, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And how many other churches, or are there other churches that are connected with My Village Ministries?
Yeah, I should know that number.
I think it's upwards of 30 or so within
Yeah.
Central Ohio. And then, like I said, there's a branch of kind of under the leadership that's in Columbus of My Village that is in Mansfield. Is there another?
They're starting a chapter of My Village in North Carolina as well.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of churches involved. Our specific involvement is through the church piece. So we're not like staffed by, or we are not on staff of My Village. But again, what's neat about it is, there's a lower administrative, that nonprofit or organization, there's a lower burden there because they're really relying and leveraging the body of believers, which then again also has the benefit of we're doing this work within the walls of the church. And, at some point we can walk through all the different roles, but all those different pieces function really through the local body. And then ideally you're encountering these families that can come and be, at the very least, be told, hey, this church did all this because we love Jesus and we love you and we want you to be a part of this community too.
So is there a staff at My Village?
Yeah.
And how many people does that entail?
Yeah, I think they have 7 people on staff, and then they also have a board, maybe 10 people on the board, 12. I'm kind of guessing a little bit, but it is definitely a smaller staff.
You mentioned that one of the purposes of the ministry is to prevent unnecessary foster care situations.
Yeah, so maybe just kind of like an example where there would be an unnecessary foster care placement that we've actually been able to host for. So mom actually was dropped off at St. Anne's up in Westerville, had 2 children with her. She was having her 3rd at that time, dropped off by her boyfriend, who then left and actually left the state following that. So in that scenario at a hospital, the hospital cannot by law let those kids go without a guardian at that point. So they would be forced to call CPS and have the kids taken into custody by the state. That then just starts this kind of ball rolling in what has been shown statistically just to be a very tough situation to get out of, just a very difficult, and traumatic situation, right? So in that case, this mom reached out to My Village. I think probably the hospital was aware of My Village and what we did. And, we got a call from the My Village staff, or they kind of send out an alert, hey, this is going on. We need a host family to step up. We actually live just 5 minutes away from that hospital, and we're able to go pick up these 2 little kids, had them for a night. They actually went right back with mom the next day, and she actually moved and went to live with some family down in Texas. So right there is just this huge avoidance of a lot of additional trauma and additional stress and anxiety, induced by your kids kind of being taken from you. Rather, there's this option of voluntarily saying, hey, could you help me in this scenario? So kind of that important word, the unnecessary, right? I think there is a realization that there are scenarios where it's necessary for the state to step in, even though that's not always working the best that it could. I think we all kind of see that and know that there are scenarios where that is necessary. And so the purpose here is not to say let's kind of step in place of the state and make sure that never happens, and we're trying to skirt any kind of system that doesn't happen, right? There's a respect for those situations, and even times where My Village might have to go towards that route, if they're seeing things that might require that. But the amount of situations that occur that are similar to the one I just mentioned are kind of amazing, that there are these so many times where the situation of a family is kind of leading towards that outcome being foster care and the state stepping in, and where the church can kind of step into that moment through My Village and say like, hey, here's some ways how can we help this mom get back on her feet, maybe with a job or housing, or just give her some time to regain her mental health.
What I think is cool that I'm hearing you say is it's kind of a two-sided equation, right? Like it's the children, but it's also the parent. So can you maybe walk us through, you've mentioned the different roles. What are the different roles within My Village, or the different makeups of the team?
The first one would be the ministry lead. So I actually function as the ministry lead here at Veritas Short North. And that's the person who's going to rally the volunteers, kind of gather the people, make sure the church is aware of what My Village is, get information out to the body so that it can kind of take up the mission of My Village. Then you have the host family. So My Village is primarily a hosting ministry where they host children. So you'll have a family who takes in a kid during a crisis situation, or siblings, however many kids it might be. But they're the ones who are actually taking the children into their home. The next role would be a coach. So when a mom calls in and says she's in crisis, once we pair her with a host family, we're also going to pair her with a coach. And that coach is going to be pursuing after her. That coach is not expected to know all the resources or all the, different things that she might need to pursue. But their job is just to love her well, to proclaim the gospel with her, to call her and pray for her, to highlight the way she's been a good mother, because most of these moms have never been told the ways that they are succeeding, the way they are fighting for their kids. A lot of them know their shortcomings as parents. I think we live in a society that they are bombarded with all of their failings. And so I feel like to step in and be able to speak life to them and just is really a powerful role. So that would be the role of the coach. They're walking alongside the mom, and then they would work with the MVM team as well to help make sure she is meeting goals and kind of moving towards progress. Then you have the care community. So the care community is a group of anybody and everybody that we can get to rally around this family. So they're going to be the people that we reach out to and say, hey, this family's hosting. Let's provide them meals. Let's provide them with diapers. Let's pay for the formula. Let's give them a gas card because they're now driving extra kids to school. Here are prayer requests that we want to share. That's the group of people that we're going to kind of rely on to help shoulder that burden with the family. Because when we go back to these families in crisis, we don't want to come back to them as like, I'm the host family who managed all of it when you couldn't. But rather, hey, we were able to do this because of the body of Christ. That's the way we were able to do it. And we want that for you too. And so just like continuing, it's just an opportunity to pull them in. We're also doing a mentor program. So any school-age child that is hosted at our church,
and this is
throughout the
not
ministry, not just our church. But so if we had a kid school-age, though, hosted at Veritas, then we would pair them with a mentor from Veritas. So MVM actually organizes and coordinates all the mentoring events. They're all planned out. Some of them were rock climbing, boating, a big campfire, hayride. So they have these planned out events, and your only job is just to pick up your mentee and bring them and just spend time with them. We've actually had a student reach out recently asking if she could have a mentor, please. So just a really awesome opportunity for somebody who might feel like, okay, hosting kids feels out of reach, but just the power of just that connectedness to somebody and how that has such ability to counterbalance trauma and just the way that could be so powerful. So that's a role we're trying to grow here at Veritas. We currently have one mentor, and I think we have like 5 kids on a waiting list. So really hopeful that role will continue to grow. So there was a study it was a book, Oprah Winfrey actually did a study, and she was studying trauma and how so ACEs score is like a test that gives you a shows you trauma, scale of trauma. But she did a study kind of looking at those scores and was like, people with a really high ACEs score shouldn't succeed, essentially. They should be the ones filling up the prisons, and they're the ones who have a really hard life. They've been through a lot. And that's true most of the time, but there's enough outliers that she's trying to figure out what is that difference, and ended up coming to the conclusion, this is not a Christian study, but came to the conclusion that connectivity to other people and one positive relationship has the power to completely counterbalance trauma. There is an element of this being the goal of like, we want to bring them through the crisis. But the truth is, we're not going to transform their circumstances. But the hope is that we'll transform their lives in the sense that they now have people in community that they can call when the crisis hits. So the chances are they're still going to face crisis. They're still going to walk through hard circumstances, and their whole life isn't going to get better after a hosting. But the idea is that they're going to have a family that they know. They're going to have a church family that they know that they can run to in that time of crisis, and that they've heard the gospel proclaimed to them.
I know I've said this before, but it just bears repeating. The holistic approach of the ministry is just fascinating to me, because I got to be honest, I did not know much about the My Village ministry at all. I mean, I know that there's been some emails about it from the church, and there's been some kind of from the front kind of announcements about it, but just like the boots on the ground practicality of all the different roles and levels. I mean, I know wraparound services has like a whole term to it now, but just the whole way that everybody, from the parent to the children to connecting the church and having even just this mentor program that's kind of a part of it, but an added piece is just quite fascinating. And Daniel, I think you alluded to this earlier, but you keep saying like we come alongside the mom, we come alongside the mom. It's like I'm sure everybody knows that like single motherhood is skyrocketed here in the West, especially in America. But do you guys encounter single fathers or fathers in crisis like that?
We've had a few scenarios like where we've been connected to the dad in situations where we've hosted, but really, yeah, like nothing to the level, I mean, I would say less than 5%. Like, okay, I don't know the actual statistic from MVM, My Village, like what they're seeing, but yeah, I mean, if you want to look for a correlating factor of what's going on in these families' lives, there's one option. So
Sure. I was just thinking, like, as you were talking about coming alongside the parent to help them through the crisis, with the community coach, right? That's the role. I mean, if it was a single father, is it gender specific? I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so if we had a dad call in, then they would very specifically look for a male coach to walk alongside with him. And MVM has actually been really working just to pray for change in that area. We have had more dads call in, like as an MVM whole organization. Again, super low numbers, but one of the things that they've been doing is just praying for all of the dads by name, that they would step up to be fathers, that they would care for their families and their children.
So you guys have mentioned that you've hosted in the past. So is that your role? Is that the thing that you guys do with My Village, is host family?
Yeah, so I currently serve as the ministry lead.
You said that, sorry.
But our family's also a host family.
Yeah, I'm interested in we've been walking through a lot of the what's of the ministry, how, what's the stats and what's the roles, but for you specifically, I'd love to hear about the why and what propelled you to get involved in this ministry in the way you have as a host family. Like I'd just love to hear your story and how that has grown into the service that you provide to the ministry and the church in this way.
About, I don't even know how long ago, 10 years ago, we lived in Tennessee, and we had gone through the process to be foster parents there. The Lord had really put it on our hearts just as a way to serve our city and the kids in our community. So we went through the whole process, got certified, and then ended up moving to Columbus. Nothing transferred because we were living in my parents' basement for almost a year. So then once we finally got into a home, it was like this revisiting of, are we still going to do that? Do we start again? What does that look like now? And it was something that was just really heavy on my heart to continue to pursue foster care. And so we ended up hearing actually from Daniel's dad about My Village and a training coming up. And I was honestly very skeptical of attending. my thought behind it was, this seems a little bit shady. It feels like it's kind of going around foster care. So I had a lot of reservations about it. But we went to the training and we're just really struck by, I think through the foster care training process, what we came to each time was, wow, the gospel answers so much of this brokenness that was not addressed in our foster care training experience. Whereas My Village was like, that's the answer. And so it was just a really exciting piece to that. We also, I think I was really convicted in the training of just the way that I had stepped into foster care with this mindset of, I'm going to help these kids that are in a hard place. I'm going to come alongside and shelter them. And I think it was during the training that the Lord really broke my heart for the mom in these families and seeing them as kids who has also walked through trauma and hard situations, and people that are also, image bearers of Christ. And so I think it just really lit my perspective on the whole thing and changed it from being like, I'm going to pull these kids out of this situation to like, man, how do we come alongside these families and prevent this? Not just prevent it, but how do we walk alongside these families to help them know the Lord? So I think that was a big part of our like starting process.
Yeah, I don't know that I had any kind of sense of like a calling to it prior to Tabitha kind of initiating it. As we've gone through it, kind of our reason why is like, or for me, and that I'm convicted of is just like, there's a sense of, if I choose not to do it, it doesn't make these situations disappear, right? Like these moms, dads, kids who are possibly on the verge of abuse and neglect are right in our neighborhoods, right? Like they're right in Columbus, Ohio. Like we've ourselves have hosted for, I think, 10 or 15 different situations. My Village has hosted for hundreds, and it's all here in Columbus, Ohio, right? Like this is not this, like it's so clearly something that the church is being called into, and like what's always helpful for me of like putting in perspective of, here's this family or this mom that's in this situation who her best next option is to call strangers to watch her kids, right? So that either means she has nobody in the location to help, or she has nobody she can trust, like in that scenario. This is what we're here for, to provide shelter and relief to the widow and the orphan, like as James teaches us, like this is true religion, right? Like this is how we put our faith into practice. And so just that conviction of like, if I say no, that mom and those kids don't disappear, right? Unfortunately, oftentimes when we do say no, they disappear from our mind and our heart, but like they still exist. Their crisis still happens. And perhaps on down the line is even more trauma for them. So I'm like, my conviction is I have a home, and there's a very powerful aspect of this ministry where you are bringing the world like over the threshold of your door, like into your beds, like into your kids' lives, at the table, eating your food. Like it gets messy, like both literally and figuratively. While that feels daunting, it's also been the thing that's been the most real way of carrying my cross, like alongside Christ.
Is there one thing or maybe a couple things that stands out as this thing is really difficult and hard, but also, teaching you at the same time?
Yeah, there can be. I think it's easy to look from the outside as like the welcoming the kids in as being hard, or the chaos, or the life adjustment. But honestly, I think the hardest part is the long-term wraparound of these families. I think you're welcoming brokenness into your home, and you can't not be broken by it. And that's a beautiful thing. I think it's something we're called to. but it's a really hard thing. I think you will grow to love these families deeply, and chances are you're not going to radically transform their circumstances. They are still going to have to fight like work all the time. They're still going to have to do daycare. They're still going to have to, like whatever their circumstances might be. Chances are their challenges are going to be more than what you are used to or have experienced. And I think as you grow to love these families, you're going to shoulder that burden alongside of them. And there's something beautiful about that, but hard, just carrying that with them. And I think that's another beautiful part about this ministry is the idea is that we continue to just like, as we grow MVM here at Veritas, the hope is that some of these moms that we walk through like close relationship with or have known for 8 years, that it's not just us carrying that burden with them, but a whole body of believers who's also carrying that with them. I mean, I was on the phone with a mom right before we came here, who's in a really tough spot and needs help and feels alone. And this is a mom who's like, I don't believe in Jesus, but for whatever reason, you're the only people who keep surrounding me. And so I'm like, may we be a church that continues to surround until the heart soften, like however long it takes. And so I think that's that however long it takes is really hard. But it is really beautiful. And I think it's what we're called to. And it's also like the same thing I think that motivates us. We do joke sometimes that we're stuck doing this forever. Because if we can't host or, however the roles might change, these families are a part of our lives. We actually had like one hosting in particular that was, it wasn't super difficult necessarily for us, but it was really hard on one of my kids. It was just someone who was the same age. So she was primarily same interest. So she was primarily the ones giving up, like sharing her toys, giving up her things. And that little girl in particular just did not there was a lot of fighting for attention. And I think she saw her as competition. And it was tough on her, in particular. And that was hard to watch as a mom. And I remember when the hosting ended, like the next morning, feeling like huge set of relief of like, I'm so glad to be done. My daughter asked me, she said, Mom, are we going to have to do that again? And I was like, oh, like that's tough. We want to like care for our children well. And so I asked her, I was like, well, like, is that something, like, what do you think? Do you want to do it again? And she was really thoughtful about it. And she asked the next question of, if we don't do it, are there still going to be moms and kids who need help? And so I told her, I was like, yeah, there are. And she was like, well, then I guess we gotta. And that has like sat with me forever of like, I do think we have this natural bend towards like protection and comfort. And again, there is wisdom in like knowing what to say yes to and what to choose. And of course, but I think just acknowledging our strong bend and lean towards comfort and realizing that I think sometimes God calls us to so much more than that. And I think this is not a ministry of any kind of comfort by any means. I don't think you'll be in any role and not feel a bit of discomfort there. But I think as a church, there's so much room to grow and just like learning to live in that place of discomfort. Because I think when we sit in a place of discomfort, we tend to rely on the Lord more. So when we're sitting with this mom in this conversation, we're like, I have no words to give you. That's when we can be like, but I do have Jesus. Like I have the gospel. And so then it might not make any sense in that moment. It might not tie in well, but like there's so many times where I'm like, this is all I have to offer you, and it's Jesus.
Well, as you were speaking, something that made me think a couple weeks ago, we just recorded the Rhythm of Service episode as the church has just come out of this sermon series on the 5 rhythms at Veritas. And in that episode with Amy Gingrich and Seth Flores, we were talking about service being people over projects. And that's just kind of what I'm hearing you guys talk about, with this not being like a light switch ministry or you're going to solve all the problems. And you guys really are, I like how you worded that, Daniel, like ushering the world into your door, right? Like it's coming into your home and sitting at your table and in the bed that you're providing for it. And that is really people over projects. And not that, the project of the counseling and helping connect families to the good services. Not that that's not important, but you guys are taking care of an immediate need with the people there and having this kind of wraparound, all-encompassing relational ministry with the whole church coming behind a family. On the flip side of what's hard about the ministry, what is something that's what maybe a story or a win or something that's really given you guys like a man, this is all worth it type of feeling?
I'll just kind of focus on just the discipleship of our family. Like our kids get to be a part of all the hard things with us and get to be able to get to disciple them in that way, to say like just what exactly Tabitha is saying as far as getting to see our kids, recognize really hard situations that are going on in the world and the need for the people of God to be present in those hardships and get to speak Christ into the world.
It's funny. I feel like some of the big wins are like amidst really hard situations. But we have one mom in particular we've known her for 8 years, and to watch like our church rally around her baby was just born last month. And to watch our church like fill up her meal train and show up at her door and bring her food and help her move. She had to move 2 days after the baby was born, and then she had a bunch of complications, ended up back in the hospital. So we ended up taking the newborn and her 2-year-old. Like, I just felt this thankfulness that like, I'm so thankful that we like said yes just for the opportunity to be a part of that.
What is the longest time that you've had to host kids in your home?
So we had some kids in our home for 6 weeks, and then it ended up having to shift to foster care, and we had them through kinship for 9 months. Outside of that, probably 3 months. I think 2 summers ago we had 2 little girls for, I think it was about 3 months. It was almost the duration of the summer.
It sounds like it'd be like a mixture of emotions when that ends. How do you feel after having kids in your home that long? Like, what is that experience like?
Yeah, it's tough. We always joke that as soon as everyone leaves, our house feels really quiet. And super, like, it feels easy. We're like, wow, life is suddenly like carefree. We have nothing going on. But it's hard. I think these kids, like I said earlier, they do become family. And so our kids have cried at goodbyes before. So I think it's tough. We do try really hard to stay in good relationship with the family, check in. Some of the families that we've had for the longest hostings, for the most part, are families that we're still connected with to this day. So it's not unusual for us to call them and they'll come over. But we had one mom in particular, though, that I think we had her kids for 8 weeks, and our kids just bonded really well with this little girl. And mom, we did not connect well with mom during the hosting. She didn't really want to be a part of it, a part of like relationship wise, just really distant. And so when the kids went back, she did not respond to any messages, would not talk to us for over a year. And the Lord just laid it on my heart to start messaging her once a month. I was like, I'm just going to send her a text. Maybe one day she'll respond. And a year later, she randomly responded and was like, if you really want to help, I'm out of diapers. And I was like, great, I'll be there. Give me the address. And I was like, I'll bring dinner too. And she was like, no, don't bring dinner. I don't have a table. And I was like, that's fine. I don't need a table. So me and a friend of mine showed up with diapers and dinner and just sat on the floor with her talking. And she was able to share that during that hosting, she felt like her kids were sad to come back to her because they had had a good time. And that was really tough on her. She felt like she had like lost this connection. And so that was part of her like pulling away from us. And she also said that she's pursued so many charities and opportunities through different organizations before. And she was like, everyone only follows up with you for so long and then they disappear. So she was like, I was waiting to see how serious you were about sticking around. And it turns out you're pretty serious.
You guys have already mentioned a couple areas that you're actively praying for people to step up or step into. But what might be a way for the church here at Veritas to partner with My Village Ministries? What is like maybe the biggest need you need right now?
Over the last a little over 7 years, having been involved with it, there was a point where it was really tough to get engagement. And now I think things are really flourishing really well. And I think there's 6 host families and a great care community around the body. And so I think that's been really good to see. I think, like Tabitha mentioned, one piece that would be awesome to see some folks step up into would be the mentoring. I think it's something that is not a huge roadblock of time. It's really all kind of curated for you. It's once a month to go pick up somebody and bring them somewhere and to an event that's planned out for you. I think knowing that we have some kids that are asking for that specifically, to me, it would be a tragedy if we can't fill that void. Which kind of leads me to the next point of just where we want to see it go. Just really getting behind what could be a very beautiful thing of seeing the families that the church is hosting for becoming part of our community in a more serious way. And I think some of these families, if they just had somebody that's hey, we'll pick you up and your kids, or maybe every other week.
Yeah. I think we'll always have needs for more host families. I think NVM's one of their things they say is they hope to lose host families because that family is so engaged with that other family that they've been caring for that they can't necessarily add in a whole nother family to start caring for. So we'll always have need for more host families. And then as we have more host families, we'll need more coaches. The goal is to have a coach for every host family. We currently have 6 host families and 3 coaches. I think the easiest onboarding would be the care community. We have a group me, and that's the care community. You just join the group me, and then you're going to hear the needs that get posted. You're going to hear the updates. That's the easiest starting point. I always tell people, I'm if you're interested, if you've thought about it, just join that and start seeing what the needs are. Start hearing the updates. I do usually say once you get started and if you truly give it a solid, effort and truly connect, it'll be hard not to stop.
Yeah, it sounds very immersive, as evidenced by you guys and your story and how long you've been involved. It's that once you start caring for these families and you're involved in this care community, it's a calling that you don't just do it for a year necessarily and move on to something else. That this is a real gift that you guys have, and calling to be immersed in the ministry and with these families, potentially for a very long time as they continue to have needs or need to find community. And I love the name too, because My Village just reminds me of the quote that it takes a village to raise a child or kids, and that the church can be that village, that we don't have to separate ourselves off from one another as families, especially here in the West, with kind of our idea of what family is. It's very confined, and this just seems like a beautiful illustration of the gospel and expanding that village and knowing that we all have a role to play.
Well, Michael and I just want to thank you both so much for just taking the time to share with us about yourselves and the My Village Ministries. And thanks for everything that you do for our community, not just at Veritas, but for Columbus and Central Ohio. And your guys' dedication, obviously, to spreading the gospel in word and deed is very evident. And so we're honored to have you with us. And thanks for sharing a little bit of your wisdom with us. But that will do it for us today on the Voices of Veritas podcast. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll catch us next time.